YouTube, it's Zoe. It is the end of the month, the end of the first month of 2016. January is now over. That went by way too quickly, but that also means it's now time for my wrap-up of the month and my TBR for February. I read 3.5 books in January, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I read them all in like the last week of the month because I was in a major reading slump at the beginning of the month, and I got sick and I didn't feel like reading then, so I read a lot of books in 1 week. But not a lot of books in all of the month, but whatever. I read some pretty good books. The first one was Wonder by R.J. Palacio, which I actually just did a review and discussion on, so if you want to hear about my thoughts in depth, I will leave that down below, but just for an overview, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was amazing. This book is about a 10-year-old named August Pullman who was born with a major facial deformity, and because of that, he has been in and out of the hospital for years, and he has been also homeschooled his entire life. But he decides to go to actual school, go to his first year of middle school, where he's going to be around kids his own age, kids who he hasn't grown up with, so they aren't used to what his face looks like. This book is told in multiple perspectives, not only August's point of view, but also his friends and his family, and people who don't really know him that well, so you get to learn about his story from all sides. I really enjoy this book, so I recommend everybody read it, especially if English isn't your first language. This is a children's book, so it would be much easier to read if you're having trouble with that, if you're just getting into English books. The next book that I read in January was The Indigo Spell by Rochelle Mead, the third book in the Bloodline series. I stuck to my TBR. I am so proud of myself because in my January TBR I said that I was going to finish it, and guess who actually fulfilled her promise? That was me. I really enjoyed this book. This one I think was my favorite in the series so far. A lot of things happened, and this series just took a turn that I was not expecting. If you've read this, you know some things happen in the end, and I'm just so happy, and I can't wait to read the next book. There are so many different stories that are happening at once, but it's not really hectic and just like a mishmash of stories, and it's not hard to follow at all. It actually is even more interesting because you really focus on one story and then you forget about the other one that's happening, but then you switch focus to that one and you're like, oh yes, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read 20s Girl by Sophie Kinsella. I actually listened to this as an audiobook in my car as I was driving to and from school. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't my favorite Sophie Kinsella book. It kind of went on a little bit too long. The ending was a little rushed. So the mystery was stretched out, and then once they solved the mystery, it ended really abruptly and everything wrapped up a little bit too perfectly. But I liked how it wasn't just about romance. There was a really nice romance in this book, but it definitely was not the main focus. It was mostly about family and friendship and was a pretty interesting mystery as well. I did overall really enjoy this story. I liked how she was both 20 years old and then the ghost of her great aunt, I think, was 20 years old, and she was from the 20s. I learned a lot about the 20s, and I also really enjoyed their friendship. So those were the 3 books that I read in January. Now on to my February TBR. The first book that I'm going to finish in February is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I am currently, how far? I am currently 124 pages into this book. I love her writing. It's so poetic and nice and descriptive. I was so confused for the first like 50 pages of this book. If you saw my statuses on Goodreads, I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I like it so far. Now I have more of an idea of what's going on. The beginning is purposely vague. It's fantasy and it's really interesting, and there are these like monster type things. I'm not going to say too much because it's best to go into this book completely blind like I was, because it makes it even more interesting once you figure out the mystery of what her life is. Thank you to everyone who voted for me to read this book in my last TBR video. I really enjoy it. The next book that I am for sure going to finish in February is The Son of Neptune by Rick Riordan. This is the second book in the Heroes of Olympus series, and I think I've been reading it for like 6 months. It's been a long journey with this book, and I still haven't finished it. I don't even know how far I am into this book, but I am listening to it as an audiobook in my car, just like 20s Girl, because I realized that it really forces me to read it quicker when I'm listening to it because they read it at a steady rhythm. So I'm going to actually finish it. I promise. This is my pinky promise to all of you. I know I've made this promise several times that I'm going to finish it, but I am actually going to finish it this month, or else. So those are all of the books that I read in January and all the books that I promised to finish in February. I hope you all enjoyed. Leave down below what your favorite book of January was and what you are most excited to read in February down below. Thank you all for watching so much. Remember to follow me on social media. My links are down below, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye!